Ding dong. The sharp chime of my phone cut through the noisy hum of the dinner table, instantly grabbing my attention. It wasn't just any notification, it was from Hannah, and my heart skipped a beat for reasons I couldn't fully admit. I froze for a fraction of a second, my fork suspended mid-air, the aroma of my mother's cooking forgotten as I swiped open the screen. There she was, smiling brightly, or at least, she looked like she was smiling at someone else. Hannah's latest photo update appeared on my screen. She was wearing a tight, midriff-bearing top, her lean body pressed casually against a man I didn't know very well, a so-called male best friend named Walter. My stomach twisted at the sight. The heart-shaped tattoo on her flat stomach, a secret that had once belonged only to me, was now on display for everyone to see. I stared at it, trying to make sense of the sudden jolt of betrayal running through me. My thumb hovered over the screen before I calmly tapped save, capturing the moment for reasons I wasn't ready to admit even to myself. A shadow fell across my phone screen, breaking my concentration. I looked up to find Buck, his towering figure looming over me as if he had appeared out of thin air. Nothing, he mumbled, trying to act casual, though the mischief in his eyes betrayed him. He downed a glass of beer and chuckled, then, unable to hold back his curiosity, leaned closer. Seriously though, he asked, your girlfriend posts something like this all over another guy and you're not angry at all? I tilted my head and looked at him lazily. Buck's face was practically screaming with curiosity, his eyes wide and insistent. What's there to be angry about? I replied smoothly, letting my tone drip with casual detachment. She has a male best friend. Besides, now I've got a perfectly good reason to break up with her. Good for you, good for me, good for everyone. Buck's jaw dropped. He blinked rapidly, incredulity written across his face. Are you for real? You literally had a huge fight with your parents during Spring Festival 2 years ago over wanting to marry her. And now you've suddenly figured it out. I ignored him, unlocking my phone again. My thumb scrolled through Hannah's post, my mind calm as if performing a simple chore. I typed out my comment with deliberate precision. Since you chose someone else, I'll let go. Wishing you happiness. I hit send and immediately, without hesitation, blocked and deleted every way to contact her. Social media accounts, phone numbers, chat apps, everything gone in one swift motion. Less than 3 minutes later, my phone rang again. The caller ID flashed Sarah, Hannah's best friend. I answered before she could speak. Sarah, you were right before, I said, my voice calm and steady, like a judge delivering a verdict. Hannah really isn't worth my love. I accept your pursuit. For a moment, silence filled the line. Then Hannah's sharp voice exploded from the other end. Raymond, what are you talking about? I raised an eyebrow, pressed hang up, and turned to see Buck, frozen in utter disbelief. A small, almost playful smile tugged at the corner of my lips as I waved my phone. Tell me, I said, my tone teasing, do you think Hannah and her best friend are fighting right now? Buck's confusion was almost comical. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, unable to form a coherent response. After dinner, I grabbed a cab back to my apartment, a spacious place my parents had bought for me years ago. The motion sensor lights flickered on as I stepped in, illuminating the emptiness of the apartment. It felt cold, almost sterile, despite its luxury. My family wasn't extremely wealthy, but we were well off enough for the locals to label us a rich landlord family. Despite that, my life had never been about indulgence. My mother's iron will dictated everything, from my education to even the smallest decisions in life. I had tried to rebel. After graduating college, I flatly refused her attempts to set me up with girls from families she approved of. I wanted to find my own path, my own love. That's how I met Hannah, on a trip meant to cool off after one of the many fights I'd had with my family. Buck had tagged along, of course, though he had his own plans. The snow-covered mountains we climbed that day seemed magical, but fate had its own sense of timing. Hannah was running out of strength as we neared the summit. Her friend, Sarah, asked Buck to help, but he passed the task to me. At first glance, I was struck, not just by her beauty, but by the way the icy wind tousled her hair, the determined curve of her jaw, the delicate strength in her arms. I felt something I had never expected, an instant, overwhelming attraction. We exchanged contacts after the trip, and I pursued her relentlessly. With a mix of charm, persistence, and a little help from Sarah, I won her over. It took less than a month before Hannah agreed to be my girlfriend. Those first days were intoxicating. We were inseparable. Every trivial moment, from meals to random street encounters, had to be shared immediately. I remember one late night when I finished overtime at the office, exhausted, only to find Hannah waiting at the company entrance with kanji she had made herself. The steam blurred her face, and I felt sure, at that moment, that she was the one I wanted for the rest of my life. But even in paradise, shadows can creep in. Over time, small things began to chip away at the initial thrill. Arguments, differences in expectations, and the ever-present influence of Sarah started to create cracks. That night, staring at Hannah's photo update with Walter, I realized something fundamental. I could no longer ignore the truth about our relationship. What had once seemed like innocence was now deception. As I looked at the photo, the calm I felt was not from relief, but clarity. I knew what I had to do. I didn't act out of spite or rage. I acted out of self-respect, knowing the path ahead. Hannah's smile in the photo, meant to charm, now felt hollow. My heart no longer fluttered for her. And so, with deliberate calm, I decided to close that chapter of my life. I deleted her from my contacts, blocked her, and let the world move on. Standing there in the quiet apartment, I felt a strange sense of freedom. The storm of emotions, the jealousy, the longing, the heartbreak, had passed. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of someone else's choices pressing down on me. And in that moment, I knew that this was only the beginning, not just of leaving Hannah behind, but of reclaiming my own life. The sound of knocking at my apartment door broke the silence like a sudden clap of thunder. I had just settled into my favorite armchair, the soft glow of a lamp casting long shadows across the room, when the knock came again, this time sharper, more insistent. I frowned. At this hour, no one should be visiting me. Not after the exhausting week at work, not after the storm that had just passed with Hannah. Carefully, I walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. What I saw made my heart stop for a moment. It wasn't Buck, nor any delivery guy I was expecting. It was her. Hannah. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen her since that decisive moment, the moment I blocked her, erased her from my life, and made a silent vow to myself never to be hurt again. And yet, here she was, standing on my doorstep, her hair slightly damp from the evening mist, eyes wide and desperate, lips parted as if she didn't quite know how to start. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Part of me wanted to slam the door and pretend she didn't exist. Another part, a smaller, foolish part, wanted to hear what she had to say. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice calm but carrying a sharp edge. She flinched at my words, then took a tentative step forward. "Raymond, please. I need to talk to you. It's important." I studied her carefully. The familiar curves of her face, the slight tilt of her head, the way her eyes glimmered with a mixture of guilt and fear. It was all the Hannah I remembered, yet somehow different. Hardened. Stronger, maybe. Or maybe it was just that I hadn't allowed myself to notice the details for so long. "Important. You made your choice already. What could possibly be more important than that?" I said, keeping my voice level but allowing a hint of the hurt I'd buried to seep through. She hesitated, swallowing hard. I made a mistake," she admitted, her voice almost breaking. Walter, it was nothing. I swear. You have to believe me." I raised an eyebrow, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Nothing." I echoed, letting a quiet disbelief hang in the air. "Do you have any idea what it felt like to see you smiling at him like that, knowing all the things we shared, all the moments we promised each other?" Her eyes filled with tears, glistening like fragile glass in the dim light of the hallway. "I know. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was confused." "Confused." I repeated, the single word sharp, slicing through the tension. "Do you know what confusion feels like? Do you know how it feels to pour your heart into someone, only to see them hand it to someone else? Do you know how it feels to feel invisible in your own relationship?" She flinched at my words, the weight of my disappointment settling on her like a heavy blanket. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The world outside continued its quiet rhythm, but inside, time seemed suspended, waiting for someone to break the silence. Finally, she whispered, almost pleadingly, "Please. Raymond, I need a chance to explain. Just 10 minutes. That's all I ask." I hesitated, my mind racing. Part of me screamed to refuse, to protect myself from more pain. Another part, the part that had once loved her with everything, felt a flicker of hope, a dangerous pull that I wasn't ready to admit. "Fine," I said after a long pause. 10 minutes. But that's it. 10 minutes. She nodded fervently, her relief palpable, and I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. She walked incautiously, almost as if stepping into a minefield. Her eyes darted around the apartment, taking in the minimalist decor, the sparse furnishings, the subtle signs of my personality etched into the space. We sat across from each other at the small dining table. I watched her fidget, twisting her fingers nervously, avoiding eye contact. The tension in the room was suffocating, yet strangely electric, as if the very air charged with the memories we had shared. "I don't know how to start," she admitted, voice trembling. I want you to know that it wasn't like it looked. Walter, he's just a friend. Nothing happened between us. I didn't mean for it to look like that." I let out a long, slow breath, my fingers drumming against the table. "Do you expect me to just believe that? After everything? After the photo, the posts, the way you flaunted it like it was nothing?" She met my gaze, her eyes pleading. I know I made a terrible mistake. I should have told you, but I was scared. Scared of losing you, scared of how you'd react. I was stupid. Her words struck a chord deep inside me. I remembered the first time we had met, the way she had smiled at me, the laughter we had shared in the quiet moments away from everyone else. I remembered the late nights we spent talking about everything, the warmth of her hand in mine, the dreams we had woven together. But I also remembered the hurt, the betrayal, the endless nights of doubt and fear. My heart ached, torn between what had been and what now was. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said finally, my voice low, carrying the weight of every emotion I had suppressed. You broke that trust once. How do I know you won't do it again? She reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered over mine. I'll do whatever it takes to prove it. I'll wait. I stopped her with a shake of my head. No, not now. Not like this. If you want me to even consider forgiveness, you need to understand, this isn't just about a mistake. It's about respect. It's about honesty. It's about being there when it matters most. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, they weren't just fear, they were determination. I understand, she whispered. I promise. I'll prove it to you. I'll show you that I can be the person you fell in love with. Just, please, don't shut me out completely. I stared at her, the conflict raging inside me like a storm. Part of me wanted to reach out, to take her hand and never let go. Another part, the part that had survived heartbreak before, knew that the path forward would be treacherous, full of doubt and pain. Finally, I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow sigh. All right, you get a chance. But know this, it won't be easy. And if you hurt me again, there won't be a third chance. She nodded solemnly, a small, hopeful smile breaking through the tears. I understand. Thank you, Raymond. I won't let you down. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. I watched her, this girl who had once been my everything, now standing at the edge of my trust, asking for a second chance. And despite everything, a small part of me, the part that had always loved her, wanted to believe in her. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory, every word, every smile. I knew that giving her another chance was a risk, maybe the biggest risk of my life. But deep down, I also knew that some loves were worth the gamble, no matter how painful the journey might be. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, I made a silent vow to myself. I would watch her, test her, and see if the love we had shared was strong enough to survive the shadows of betrayal. And if it was, maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what we had lost. The morning sun filtered softly through the blinds, casting thin stripes of light across my apartment floor. I had spent the first hours of dawn staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of last night in my mind. Hannah was here, back in my life, asking for a second chance, but the question gnawed at me relentlessly. Could I trust her again? When she had left my apartment last night, it was with that small, hopeful smile and a promise she might somehow repair what she had broken. But promises were fragile, especially ones spoken after betrayal. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew love could be tested in ways words alone could never prepare you for. By mid-morning, a soft knock startled me. It was her. Of course. She hadn't texted or called. She had just shown up, as though she had never left. Her hair was slightly damp from a light drizzle outside, strands clinging to her forehead, eyes bright yet cautious. Morning, she said softly, almost like a whisper. I thought, maybe we could talk, just for a bit. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Fine. But no grand gestures. No, I'll change promises unless you actually mean them. She nodded, her expression serious, almost desperate. I mean it, Raymond. I know I can't undo the past, but I can try to make things right now. We walked to the nearby cafe, the streets quiet except for the occasional car passing. The air smelled faintly of rain and wet pavement, a bittersweet scent that somehow matched the tension between us. We found a corner table, one far from the other patrons, and settled in for a long moment. We sat in silence. I sipped my coffee, watching her fidget with the sleeve of her jacket, her gaze darting around the cafe. I wanted to ask the questions that burned in my mind, but I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for the answers. Finally, I broke the silence. Why now, Hannah? After everything, why come back? Her lips trembled as she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Because I realized I threw away something precious. Something I might never get back. I was foolish, Raymond. Stupid. And I can't stop thinking about you, about us. I can't pretend anymore. Her honesty, raw and unpolished, cut through me. I had spent so long convincing myself that her betrayal defined her, that the Hannah I once loved was gone forever. But here she was, alive with emotion, pleading for a chance, and I couldn't deny the pull I still felt. And you think words are enough? I asked, my tone sharp but my heart betraying a flicker of hope. No, she admitted. I know words aren't enough. That's why I'm willing to prove it. In any way you want. I'll be patient. I'll be honest. I'll do whatever it takes. Her eyes were unwavering now, the determination shining through the tears. I felt a pang of guilt. I wanted to trust her, wanted to believe that love could survive this, but the fear of being hurt again loomed over me like a dark cloud. Then you'll have to understand something, I said slowly. This won't be easy. Every step, every gesture. I'll be watching. Not to trap you, but to see if you really mean it. If you falter, even once, I don't know if I can forgive you again. She nodded, her hands folded tightly on the table. I understand. I'll accept anything you set. No conditions, no complaints. I just want a chance. I studied her carefully, noting the subtle shifts in her posture, the nervous energy that radiated from her. Part of me was afraid that I was being played again, but another part, stubborn, foolish, and hopeful, wanted to believe in the sincerity of her words. We spent the next hour talking, cautiously at first, about trivial things, work, friends, even a funny incident from months ago that made both of us laugh softly. It was the first genuine laughter we had shared in weeks, a fragile bridge reconnecting the distance that had grown between us. As we left the cafe, the drizzle had stopped, leaving the streets glistening. I walked beside her, side by side but not touching. The silence was comfortable now, filled with unspoken possibilities. I know this will take time, I said, glancing at her. Trust isn't something you can just give me back overnight. I know, she replied softly. And I'll wait. No matter how long it takes. There was a pause, heavy with meaning, and then she asked, almost shyly, Can I maybe walk with you a bit? Just until you get home. I hesitated, then nodded. All right, but remember, small steps. One at a time. We walked in silence, the city slowly waking around us. The faint hum of traffic, the distant chatter of pedestrians, the soft patter of residual raindrops on the pavement, it all created a rhythm, almost as if the world itself was urging me to consider the possibility of hope. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to imagine a life where Hannah could be trusted again, where love wasn't overshadowed by betrayal. But the shadow of doubt lingered, reminding me that hope was a delicate flame, easily extinguished by the slightest mistake. By the time we reached my apartment building, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting warm golden light across the streets. I turned to her, noting the determination in her eyes, and felt a cautious optimism stirring within me. Tomorrow, I said, we start the real test. No shortcuts, no easy conversations. Just honesty, actions, and patience. She smiled, a small, hopeful curve of her lips. I'm ready. Whatever it takes. As she walked away, disappearing around the corner, I felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional minefields, but for the first time in weeks, I felt alive. And I knew one thing for certain. If Hannah could prove herself, if love could endure this storm, then maybe, just maybe, we could reclaim what we had lost. The following morning, the city seemed sharper somehow, the sunlight glaring off the windows like a spotlight on my unresolved emotions. I woke earlier than usual, the events of yesterday still swirling in my mind. Hannah had shown up, insisted on a second chance, and somehow convinced me to take cautious steps forward. I wasn't naive. I knew that trust wasn't rebuilt with coffee dates or shared laughter. Trust was tested in the real world, where distractions, temptations, and mistakes could either shatter it completely or slowly cement it. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Hannah. I'll meet you at the park in an hour. No games. Just honesty. I debated ignoring it. Part of me wanted to retreat into the comfort of solitude, to protect the fragile walls around my heart. But another part, stubborn, curious, foolish, knew I had to see her, had to confront what this second chance might truly mean. When I arrived at the park, she was already there, pacing slightly near the fountain. The air smelled faintly of wet grass and blooming flowers, a subtle reminder that life continued, indifferent to our personal chaos. Hannah, I called softly, keeping my distance. She turned, relief washing over her face. Raymond, thanks for coming. We started walking along the path lined with cherry blossom trees, their petals drifting lazily in the wind. It was beautiful, almost poetic, but I couldn't let the scenery distract me from the seriousness of the moment. Yesterday was just a conversation, I said, breaking the silence. Today, I need to see actions. I need to know if you really mean what you say. She nodded, her hands gripping the strap of her bag. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. For the next hour, we wandered, talking about everything, small lies we had told each other, past mistakes, and personal fears. But the real test began when a group of friends from my office appeared on the path ahead, laughing and joking as they passed by. One of them, Vanessa, smiled brightly at Hannah. Hey, you're Raymond's friend, right? she said, her tone playful but slightly flirtatious. Hannah's smile stiffened for a moment, and I noticed her hand clench around her bag strap. There was a subtle tension in her posture, a silent challenge, but she didn't respond with jealousy or defensiveness. Instead, she laughed lightly, keeping her tone casual. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I realized that trust wasn't only about words or promises, it was about composure, patience, and restraint. And Hannah seemed to understand that, even when faced with subtle tests. Later, as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset, I decided to push boundaries a little further. Tell me something, I said, turning to her. If someone tried to flirt with you, really tried, what would you do? She looked me in the eye, her expression steady. I'd tell them I'm not interested. You're the one I want to prove myself to, not anyone else. Her honesty made my chest tighten. I wanted to believe her completely, but the shadow of doubt lingered. My heart wanted to trust her fully, but my mind reminded me of the pain she had caused before. Then, as if the universe wanted to truly test her resolve, a young man jogged past, clearly smitten, and called out to her. Hannah didn't flinch. She didn't turn. She simply smiled politely and kept walking beside me. It was a small act, but it spoke volumes. Trust wasn't built overnight. It was built moment by moment, in the choices we made when no one was watching. As we walked back toward my apartment, the first stars began to appear, faint pinpricks in the twilight sky. I glanced at her, feeling a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. She was proving herself, but the road ahead was long. Tomorrow, I said finally, we step into the real world. Work, friends, distractions, everything. That's when I'll see if trust can survive outside this bubble. Hannah nodded, her eyes shining with determination. I'm ready. I won't let you down. As we parted that evening, I felt a cautious optimism stirring within me. She was making the right choices, proving her sincerity. But I couldn't ignore the nagging fear. The real test had yet to come, and the world outside was unpredictable, full of temptations and challenges that could undo everything we were carefully rebuilding. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of our day. The small victories gave me hope, but I knew better than to celebrate too soon. Trust was fragile, and love even when rekindled was a battlefield. Tomorrow would be the true measure of Hannah's commitment. The next morning felt heavier than usual. The sunlight spilled into my room, but it didn't warm the shadows lingering in my mind. Hannah had been cautious, steady, and sincere yesterday, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that the past had a way of sneaking back when you least expected it. I arrived at work, trying to focus on mundane tasks, emails, spreadsheets, phone calls. But every glance at my phone made my stomach tighten. Hannah had promised honesty, yet I couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that there were pieces of her life I hadn't seen, secrets carefully hidden. By mid-afternoon, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. Raymond, I think you should know the truth about Hannah before it's too late. My heart skipped a beat. I stayed at the message, my mind racing. Who could it be? And what truth were they referring to? Before I could reply, the office door swung open. Vanessa, the same woman from the park, smiled at me, carrying a folder. Raymond, I didn't know if you'd want to see this, but I thought you should know. Inside the folder were photos, Hannah in situations I hadn't expected. Not dangerous or criminal, but intimate, private moments with people I didn't recognize. My chest tightened as I flipped through them. The first instinct was anger, betrayal, but as I looked closer, I realized these moments had all occurred before she came back into my life. They were remnants of a past I hadn't asked about, a past she hadn't fully disclosed. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, demand answers. Another part wanted to run, afraid that digging too deep would destroy the fragile trust we were trying to rebuild. When I finally called her, her voice on the phone was calm but cautious. Raymond, is everything okay? She asked. I saw something, I admitted, my voice tight. Photos. People from your past. You never mentioned them. There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. Then she spoke, softly but firmly. I wanted to. I was scared. I didn't want my past to ruin what we're trying to build. But if you want the truth, I'll tell you everything. We met that evening in the same park where we had rebuilt small fragments of trust. Her hands were trembling slightly, but her eyes were steady. She told me everything, past relationships, mistakes, and moments of weakness. Nothing criminal, nothing malicious, just a life lived imperfectly, like all of ours. As she spoke, I realized that trust wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty, even when it was uncomfortable, even when the truth hurt. I could feel a fragile thread of connection strengthening again, but the fear of relapse, of temptation, of lies, lingered like a shadow. When she finished, I didn't immediately respond. I sat in silence, watching the wind stir the cherry blossom petals. Finally, I spoke. Thank you for telling me. I can't say it's easy, but honesty matters more than hiding the past. We'll have to be patient with each other. This, I gestured between us, this is fragile, but maybe it's worth protecting. She nodded, relief washing over her face. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Raymond. I want this, us, to work. We parted that night with a cautious optimism. The past had been revealed, and while it brought discomfort, it also offered a chance to rebuild something real, if we could navigate the shadows without letting them consume us. As I walked home, the city lights flickered around me, casting long shadows across the pavement. Trust was fragile, but resilience was possible. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. The days after Hannah's confession were quiet, almost unnervingly so. The city around us carried on in its usual chaos, but every interaction felt weighted, every glance a test. I wanted to trust her fully, but the shadows of her past clung stubbornly to my mind, whispering doubts I tried to silence. It started with small things. Friends at work made offhand comments, questions about her, curious glances, and I noticed Hannah flinching, retreating slightly. She tried to brush it off, but I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, the same fear I had felt in myself. Then came Michael, an old friend of Hayes from years ago. He appeared suddenly one evening, showing up at the coffee shop where we often met. His greeting was warm, almost too familiar, and my chest tightened. Hannah, it's been so long, he said, oblivious to the tension between us. Michael, she replied cautiously, her smile strained. I forced a polite smile, but inside I was a storm. Michael seemed harmless enough, but the history between them was invisible, leaving me to wonder what she hadn't told me. That night, after he left, Hannah broke down. Raymond, I didn't tell you everything about him, or what I felt back then. I wanted to react, anger, jealousy, but I held my tongue. Just, tell me now, I said, my voice calm but firm. She did. Every confession was like a spark lighting dry tinder in my mind. I listened, each word testing my patience, my ability to trust, my capacity to love despite fear. By the end, I realized something crucial. Love wasn't the absence of doubt, it was the willingness to face doubt together. The next morning brought another test. I found an envelope slipped under my office door. No name, just a note. You don't know her like you think you do. Be careful. Inside were old newspaper clippings, stories about Hannah's past decisions, mistakes, and public incidents. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about her past anymore. Someone was actively trying to destabilize us, to manipulate fear and mistrust. I confronted Hannah immediately. Her eyes widened when she saw the envelope. I didn't expect anyone to dig this up, she said, panic fretting her voice. This isn't just about the past, Hannah, I said, my voice low. Someone wants us to fail. We spent that night strategizing, talking, and defending ourselves, not physically, but emotionally, mentally. We realized that the test wasn't just about past mistakes, it was about resilience, about facing pressure from both inside and outside. By the end of it, something had shifted. We weren't naive anymore. Trust had become active work, a conscious decision, not just a feeling. We were still fragile, but we were also stronger, bonded by the knowledge that the outside world could not define us unless we let it. As we walked home under the flickering streetlights, hand in hand, I felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. Love wasn't simple, and trust was never easy. But together, we had survived the first real storm, and if the next one came, we'd face it side by side. The city felt heavier that morning, as if the air itself had thickened with anticipation. Every step I took toward the office, every glance at Hannah, carried the weight of unspoken truths. The envelope from yesterday still burned in my mind, a silent accusation I couldn't ignore. When I arrived, the office phone rang, its sharp trill slicing through the quiet. I picked it up, heart hammering. Raymond. The voice on the other end was cold, deliberate. You don't know the full story about her. Meet me at the park at noon, alone. Or regret it. My hands clenched around the receiver. I hung up, my thoughts racing. Hannah, I said, my voice taut with urgency. We need to talk. Someone's trying to drag your past into the present. Her eyes widened, a storm of fear and defiance. I can handle it, she whispered, though I could see the doubt trembling in her hands. At noon, I arrived at the park. The city's usual noise felt distant, muted. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, composed, and intimidating. It was Michael. You shouldn't have dug too deep, he said, his tone calm but menacing. There are things about Hannah that even you aren't ready to face. Why now? I demanded. Why threaten us? Michael's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Because the truth doesn't disappear, Raymond. It waits. He handed me a folder, thick with documents, photos, and notes. My chest tightened as I flipped through them. Every detail painted a version of Hannah I didn't recognize, a web of mistakes, betrayals, and painful choices. Before I could react, Hannah peed behind me, her eyes blazing. Raymond, listen. That's not the full story. Every piece of paper is twisted, taken out of context. I turned to her, torn between the evidence in my hands and the woman I loved. Hannah, how much of this is true? She swallowed hard. Some of it. But it's not who I am now. I'm not that person anymore. I've changed. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around us. Time felt suspended, every heartbeat echoing louder than the last. I realized then that this was more than a test of trust, it was a test of survival. Not just survival of us, but of the fragile love we'd been building. Then prove it, I said quietly, by facing it with me. Don't hide from your past. We deal with it together, or not at all. For the first time that day, relief softened her eyes. Together, she agreed. And just like that, the shadows that had haunted us for weeks began to feel smaller. We weren't naive anymore. We were fighters, bound not by perfection, but by the choice to stand together even when the world tried to tear us apart. As we walked away from the park, the folder clutched in my hand felt heavy, but lighter somehow. Heavy with truth, yes, but also with the possibility of a future built on honesty and courage. We knew the fight wasn't over. But for the first time, I believed we could face it. The evening air was thick with unease as Hannah and I drove through the city streets. The folder from Michael rested on the passenger seat, a silent warning that nothing would ever feel normal again. I can't believe he just handed it to you, Hannah muttered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her knuckles were white, but her jaw was set. Why doesn't he just leave us alone? I shook my head. Because he wants leverage. And he knows the past is the easiest way to control the present. We pulled into a quiet alley behind my apartment. The city's lights flickered through the smog, casting elongated shadows on the walls. I unlocked the door, but the moment we stepped inside, my phone buzzed. A text. No number. No name. Just a single message. You can't protect her forever. She's already marked. Hannah froze. Marked, she whispered, fear rippling across her face. Before I could answer, a loud crash echoed from a balcony. I grabbed her hand and pulled her behind the couch as a shadowy figure leapt down from above. A fight erupted. Swift, brutal, instinctive. It was Michael's men. Not him, but the people who did his bidding. I didn't think. I acted. Fists, elbows, anything to defend us. Hannah grabbed a broken lamp, swinging it like a weapon with surprising strength. Together, we managed to push them back long enough to escape into the night. Breathless, we ducked into a nearby parking garage, the city's chaos now a distant hum. We can't stay here, I panted. They'll be back, and next time, we might not get lucky. Hannah nodded, her face pale but determined. Then we face them. But this time, we do it smart. No running. No hiding. Her resolve hit me harder than any punch. She wasn't the same person in those files. She was stronger, smarter, fiercer. And if we were going to survive, we'd need to embrace the truth together, fully. That night, as we planned our next move, I realized something crucial. The past wasn't just knocking on our door. It was trying to drag us down. But together, we could turn it into a weapon instead of a chain. And as dawn broke over the city skyline, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. Nothing would ever be simple again. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what made it worth fighting for. The next morning, the city seemed deceptively calm. Sunlight streamed through the cracked blinds of my apartment, but inside, a storm brewed. Hannah and I sat at the kitchen table, the folder from Michael between us, now a symbol of everything we had to face. We need a plan, I said, tracing a finger along the edges of the folder. We can't wait for them to make the next move. They'll come, and next time, they won't be careless. Hannah nodded, her eyes sharp. First, we separate fact from fey. Not everything in here is real. Some of it is just to scare us. But the threats, those are real. We spent the morning scanning through files, emails, and pictures, mapping every connection Michael had and every vulnerable point he could exploit. Every time we found a weak link, we marked it. Every time we hit a dead end, frustration built, but neither of us gave up. By noon, we were ready. We couldn't just hide or react anymore. We had to take control. Hannah volunteered to reach out to her old contacts quietly, people who owed her favors. I focused on tracking Michael's recent activities and locations, piecing together a pattern. That evening, we executed our first move. A subtle ambush, designed not to hurt anyone but to send a clear message. We weren't afraid. As we waited in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse, the tension was almost unbearable. Every sound made us flinch, every movement made our hearts race. Then, finally, they appeared. Two men, clearly not amateurs, approaching a meeting point cautiously. I signaled to Hannah. She moved with precision, a mix of fear and determination in her every motion. When the men saw us waiting, surprise flashed across their faces. But that hesitation was all we needed. With calculated speed, we disarmed them, forced them to retreat, and left a clear warning on the wall. Stay away or face consequences. As we walked back to the car, adrenaline still pumping, Hannah let out a shaky laugh. That was insane. I glanced at her, a small smile tugging at my lips. Yes, but it worked. And now they know, they can't intimidate us anymore. That night, as we returned home, there was a new sense of confidence between us. The fear was still there, but it no longer ruled us. We were ready for whatever Michael tried next, and we knew we could face it together. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The past had been a threat, the shadows a warning, but with strategy, courage, and trust, we were beginning to reclaim our lives. The morning after our ambush, the city felt different, thicker somehow, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Michael didn't strike immediately, but we both knew it was coming. The calm was just a prelude. At the office, subtle signs began to appear, a misplaced file here, an anonymous email there. Someone was watching, testing, probing. Hannah noticed it first. "Look at this," she whispered, sliding a printout across my desk. It was a photo of us leaving the warehouse, clearly taken by someone hiding in the shadows. I frowned, my stomach twisting. He's escalating. He wants to scare us. But we weren't going to be intimidated. Hannah and I spent the day fortifying our defenses, changing routines, alerting our allies, installing surveillance, and making contingency plans. Every small detail mattered now. By evening, the first direct attack came. Our phones buzzed simultaneously, messages filled with threats, demands, and misinformation. One read, "You think you can hide? You're exposed. Step wrong, and everything you love will burn." Instead of fear, I felt a surge of determination. "He's overplaying," I muttered. "We've already proven we can handle this. It's time to take the next step." Hannah nodded. "We need to cut the strings he's pulling. Find out who's helping him." Over the next few hours, we traced the messages, uncovered a network of his accomplices, and started dismantling it piece by piece. Every time we intercepted a plan, we left a counter-message, clear, calm, and unyielding. Michael had underestimated us. That night, as we stood on the rooftop overlooking the city, Hannah turned to me, her face serious but resolute. "We've fought him off today. But tomorrow, who knows?" I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll fight again. Together." For the first time, I realized that fear alone could never control us. Michael could try, threaten, and manipulate, but he could not break the trust and determination we shared. And that realization gave me a sense of strength I hadn't felt in years. As the city lights shimmered below, I knew the real battle had only just begun, but this time, we would be ready the next morning. Michael's true intentions became clear. He didn't send another anonymous threat. Instead, he showed up in person. I spotted him as soon as I stepped out of the office building, leaning against his car, arms crossed, a faint smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. Behind him, two of his accomplices lingered, pretending to be casual bystanders. Hannah froze beside me. He's really here," she whispered. I nodded, keeping my voice low. "Stay calm. Don't give him the satisfaction of seeing fear." Michael pushed off the car, walking toward us with slow, deliberate steps. Well, he said, his tone smooth but laced with menace. "Look at you two. I expected a little more. Fight." I clenched my fists. "We're not scared of you, Michael. Whatever game you're playing ends today." He laughed softly, a sound that grated against my nerves. "Ends today. Oh, my dear friend, this is only the beginning." Hannah stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "Enough. Leave us alone. Whatever grudge you have, it stops now." Michael's smile faltered for a split second, replaced by cold calculation. "You think you can stop me? You're blind if you believe you can outmaneuver me." "We made it," she said quietly. I nodded, but my mind was already racing. Michael had tested our limits today. Tomorrow, he might push further. Yet one thing was certain, we were ready for whatever came next. That day marked a turning point. No more anonymous threats, no more games. Michael's presence had brought the conflict into the open. And now, it was a matter of strategy, preparation, and staying one step ahead. Hannah and I spent the rest of the evening reviewing our plans, strengthening our defenses, and confirming alliances. Fear had no place here. Only action. For the first time in months, I felt a calm clarity. We weren't running anymore. We were standing our ground. The night after Michael's confrontation, sleep didn't come easy. Every shadow in the apartment seemed to whisper his name. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. But deep down, I knew fear wasn't an option anymore. Hannah sat across from me at the kitchen table, a map of the city spread out between us. Pins marked locations, red lines traced routes, and small notes reminded us of allies and potential threats. "We need to hit him where it hurts," I said, tracing a finger over the map. "He thinks he's untouchable because he controls the fear. But he has a pattern. We just need to find the leverage." Hannah nodded. "And we can't underestimate him. One wrong move, and everything falls apart." By dawn, we had a plan. No reckless confrontations this time. We would draw Michael out, but on our terms. Surveillance, calculated risk, and a single objective: expose him before he struck again. Hours later, Michael made his move. A delivery arrived at my office, a plain, unmarked box. Inside, a single USB drive. No note, no message. Only the implicit challenge. I glanced at Hannah. It's a trap, but we need to see what's on it. Plugging it into the laptop, files began to reveal themselves: documents, emails, recordings. Each piece was a puzzle, showing Michael's network, his manipulations, and the people who helped him operate in the shadows. "This is it," Hannah whispered. "Everything we need." Suddenly, the screen flickered, and a new file opened. A video. Michael's face appeared, calm, collected, and dangerous. "You've seen enough," he said, his voice smooth and cold. "But remember, knowledge isn't power unless you act. You have one choice: walk away, or see what happens when curiosity gets punished." The video ended. The screen went black. I looked at Hannah, determination burning in my chest. No more running. No more hiding. It's time we turn the tables. Over the next 24 hours, we traced Michael's contacts, verified leads, and coordinated with law enforcement and trusted allies. Every step was precise, calculated, and deliberate. By the evening, the net was closing. We knew Michael would realize his anonymity was compromised and make a desperate move. Sure enough, a call came in, a location, a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Michael's signature arrogance practically radiated through the phone. "Come find me if you dare," he said, chuckling before hanging up. Hannah and I exchanged a glance. This was it. The confrontation we had been preparing for. No more threats, no more games. The final chapter of this ordeal was about to begin, and this time, we weren't just reacting. We were in control. The warehouse loomed in the fading light, its rusted exterior hiding the secrets within. Hannah and I approached cautiously, every step measured, every shadow a potential threat. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Crates were stacked haphazardly, casting angular shadows across the concrete floor. And there he was, Michael, leaning casually against a crate, a smirk playing on his lips. "Right on time," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find me." I kept my gaze steady. "It's over, Michael. All of it. Your network, your manipulation. It ends tonight." He laughed, a sound devoid of true amusement. "Ends? You think you've seen everything? You've barely scratched the surface." Hannah stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "We know enough. And more importantly, we're ready." For a moment, the warehouse was silent, the only sound the distant hum of the city outside. Then Michael lunged toward the door, attempting to escape, but our coordinated plan kicked in. Allies we had contacted earlier blocked the exits, leaving him trapped. Cornered, Michael's arrogance faltered for the first time. He tried negotiation, threats, manipulation, but each attempt only reinforced our control. "You underestimated us," I said, keeping my voice calm, steady. "You thought fear could hold us back. But knowledge, courage, and determination, that's stronger than anything you've ever wielded." Finally, law enforcement arrived, having been tipped off with precise coordinates and evidence. Michael's empire, built on intimidation and secrecy, unraveled in real time. As they handcuffed him, he glared at me, a mixture of disbelief and fury in his eyes. "This isn't the end," he spat. "It is for now," I replied, watching as he was led away. For the first time in months, a weight lifted. Hannah and I stood in the empty warehouse, the chaos around us slowly fading. The city outside continued, oblivious to the battle that had just concluded within its borders. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, letting a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding escape me. "But let's never forget how close we came, and how powerful courage can be when paired with action." Outside, the first light of dawn broke over the skyline. A new day had begun, one without fear, manipulation, or shadows. And for the first time in a long while, hope felt real. Weeks had passed since Michael's arrest. Life gradually returned to its rhythm, but nothing felt the same. The city was quieter in our minds, our hearts lighter. The fear and uncertainty that had once shadowed every step had been replaced by a sense of accomplishment and freedom. Hannah and I spent our mornings in peaceful routines, savoring small victories and simple joys. She returned to her studies, determined to pursue her dreams without fear of manipulation. I focused on rebuilding what had been disrupted in my life: work, friendships, and trust. We often talked about that night in the warehouse. It had been terrifying, yes, but it had also revealed strengths we didn't know we possessed. Courage, resilience, and teamwork had carried us through, and we were stronger for it. Our families gradually learned the truth about Michael's schemes. There were apologies, awkward explanations, and relief that we had survived unscathed. Bonds strengthened, relationships deepened, and old grievances faded in the light of our shared ordeal. Months later, as the leaves turned golden and the city settled into a crisp autumn, we walked together through a quiet park. No shadows, no lingering threats, just us, our laughter echoing softly against the trees. Hannah paused, looking at me with a smile that carried both mischief and relief. We really did it, didn't we? We did, I said, squeezing her hand. And nothing can touch us now. Not fear, not lies, not anyone who underestimates us. For the first time in years, the future felt open, bright, and full of possibilities. Life had tested us, pushed us to the edge, and tried to break us, but we had endured. Together. And as we continued our walk, the city stretched endlessly before us, a world ready to be claimed, not by fear or jealousy, but by courage, love, and the quiet confidence of those who know their own strength. It was the beginning of everything we had ever wanted, and nothing would ever take it away.